So Khamzat came out with a statement that would some people might think is controversial. I'm gonna read it to you. So he said Jake Paul will kill him. That guy Nate Diaz is too weak, too old. 5 years before they fight against each other, no. But now Nate Diaz is too old. His time is over. People become old, younger guys come in, and we take over. Khamzat. So, how do I break this statement down? I guess I'll just go right for the jugular, people. I believe Khamzat, he has a point here. I think that Nate Diaz is past his prime. You know, Nate Diaz is, I believe, 37 years old, and he's beyond his prime. Now, this is despite his victory over Tony Ferguson, but, you know, is that something to be writing home about? Is that something at this point in time? Because Tony Ferguson is another one of those people that I believe that is past his prime as well. And so when you look at that victory, was it impressive? Yes, it was. But was it apples versus apples, or was it apples versus oranges? I think it was more of apples versus apples, but one had to be a victor, and that was Nate Diaz. And so when I say apples to apples, I mean these are both fighters that are past their prime. And so Nate Diaz got the job done, but this isn't MMA. Now, if we're talking MMA and we're saying Nate Diaz right now at the age of 37 fighting Jake Paul in MMA, Nate Diaz all the way. I think Nate Diaz, with his grappling ability, with his ability, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I think his clinching ability alongside everything else that he can do inside the cage, Nate Diaz all the way. Nate Diaz until he's got dang 65 years old. But we're talking boxing here, people. And so when we're in the ring, I think Jake Paul and his youth plays a huge role. His youth and his athleticism. And so when we look at that and we go into Jake Paul fighting in boxing, I think he has the advantage going against Nate Diaz. Now, there have been talks of Jake Paul wanting to fight Nate Diaz next, and I think there's a good possibility that that could happen next. You know, Nate Diaz is not going to turn that down. Nate Diaz is on this journey of making that money, baby. He's making that money. And so I think, of course, he's going to take the Jake Paul fight. And I think, of course, he thinks he's going to beat Jake Paul. Of course he is. Of course he thinks that. But I think the likelihood of a person winning this fight, it's going to be Jake Paul. Like I said, his youth plays a factor. I think his athleticism plays a factor. A lot of you thought that, Anderson Silva was going to beat Jake Paul. And I have a video that states that I thought that Jake Paul was going to win that fight too. And it's for the same exact reason. It's because I thought that Jake Paul's youth was gonna pull him through. I thought Jake Paul's athleticism was gonna pull him through, and he's getting better as a boxer. Now, I don't think that he's at any elite level by no means, by no stretch, of the game. He's in the elite level, but is he heading towards amateur level? He's getting there, if not there already. Yes, he just lost to Tommy Fury, but I don't think he got blown out. I think if you are Jake Paul's manager, I think Nate Diaz is the perfect comeback to try to win a fight. He's a big name in the UFC. He's known to be a good boxer in MMA, but we all know that boxing MMA is different than actual boxing. And so if I had to choose, if I had to put money on that fight, because I do think it's going to foreign people, I do think that Jake Paul is going to win that fight. I think Jake Paul beats a lot of people who aren't pure boxers. I'm just going to be honest. People who aren't pure boxers and who have a little bit of age on them. Because if we're talking about maybe a kickboxer in his prime, I think that might be a different story. Even if we're talking about a kickboxer who's like a Nikki Holskin, or a Joseph Valtellini who's outside of his prime. He doesn't fight anymore, but I think Joseph Valtellini would put in work on Jake Paul. And all of my kickboxing fans know exactly who I'm talking about when it comes to those two kickboxers. And so, comment down below what you guys think about this possible matchup that's likely going to happen, in my opinion. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.